Before we dive in, quick disclaimer. This isn't financial or tax advice. It's just one regular person sharing lessons learned and lessons still in progress. If debt has ever made you feel embarrassed, stuck, or like you're somehow behind in life, this video is for you. Not because you made terrible choices, not because you're irresponsible, but because debt has a way of turning normal life into something that feels heavy and personal, even when it shouldn't. In the last video, we talked about emergency funds and why they change everything, how having a buffer turns panic into calm and keeps one bad expense from wrecking your month. Today, we're talking about what usually comes next, debt. Not in an aggressive, shame-filled way, not with extreme rules, but in a way that actually works for normal people with real lives. Let's start by clearing something up, because this matters more than any strategy. Debt is not a moral failure. It's not a sign you're bad with money. It's not proof that you lack discipline. For most people, debt is simply what happens when life costs more than cash flow can handle at certain moments. Cars break down, medical bills show up, education costs money, housing costs money, and sometimes credit fills the gap. The problem isn't that debt exists. The problem is when debt becomes permanent. Most people don't feel stressed because they have debt. They feel stressed because the debt feels endless. Like no matter how much effort they put in, the balances don't move fast enough. Or worse, they move backward. That feeling doesn't come from laziness. It comes from fighting debt without stability. That's why this video comes after the emergency fund video, not before it. Trying to aggressively pay off debt without a buffer is like trying to drain water from a boat that's still leaking. You might make progress, but one wave can undo it all. So before we talk about how to deal with debt, we need to talk about how people usually deal with it and why that fails. Most advice about debt falls into two extremes. One side says, don't worry about it. Everyone has debt. Just live your life. The other side says, cut everything. Suffer now. Live like a monk. Debt is evil. Neither approach works long-term for most people. Ignoring debt leads to stagnation. Extreme restriction leads to burnout. The middle ground is where progress actually happens. The first step in dealing with debt the right way is understanding what kind of debt you have. Not all debt behaves the same, and not all debt needs to be attacked the same way. Some debt is tied to things you need to live and function. Some debt is tied to convenience or emergencies. Some debt grows quickly. Some debt grows slowly. Treating all of it the same leads to frustration. But here's the key point most people miss. Before you try to eliminate debt, you need to stop creating new debt. And that doesn't happen through willpower alone. It happens through systems. This is where the emergency fund comes back into the picture. When you don't have a buffer, debt becomes your emergency fund. Every surprise goes on a card. Every disruption adds to the balance. You're trying to climb a hill while the ground keeps sliding back. When you have even a small emergency fund, that pattern starts to break. New debt slows down. Old debt finally has a chance to shrink. That's why the first goal with debt is not speed, it's containment. If your balances aren't growing anymore, you're already winning. Now let's talk about why debt feels so mentally draining. Debt is loud. It sends statements. It sends notifications. It reminds you of itself constantly. And every reminder carries a little emotional weight. Shame, anxiety, frustration, comparison. Over time, that emotional load makes people avoid looking at their numbers. And when you don't look, the debt controls the narrative in your head. Clarity changes that. One of the most empowering things you can do with debt is simply list it out. All of it. Balances, interest rates, minimum payments. Not to judge yourself, just to see the truth. Most people avoid this step because they're afraid of the total. But once it's written down, something interesting happens. The debt stops being a vague monster and starts becoming a set of specific problems. And specific problems can be solved. This is also where people often feel overwhelmed and try to do too much at once. They want to throw every extra dollar at debt, cut all spending, and fix everything immediately. That urge comes from discomfort, not strategy. The goal at this stage is not to be heroic. It's to be consistent. Consistency is what kills debt, not intensity. Here's a mindset shift that helps a lot. Instead of thinking, I need to get out of debt as fast as possible, think, I need a system that reduces debt every month without making me miserable. If your plan requires constant sacrifice, it won't last. And a plan that doesn't last doesn't work. So, what does a sustainable debt approach look like? First, minimum payments are non-negotiable. They protect your credit and keep things from spiraling. Second, any extra you can pay should be intentional, not emotional. You choose where extra money goes ahead of time, not in a moment of guilt. Some people prefer focusing on the smallest balance first to build momentum. Others prefer focusing on the highest interest rate to reduce long-term cost. Both can work. The best method is the one you can actually stick with. What matters more than the method is that the extra payment happens automatically, if possible. Automation removes the emotional tug-of-war. When the extra payment is scheduled, you don't have to decide every month whether to do it. The system decides. Another important piece here is understanding that debt payoff doesn't have to mean deprivation. You don't need to remove all enjoyment from your life to make progress. In fact, doing so often backfires. That's why your budget still includes fun. That's why flexibility exists. Progress that includes breathing room is progress that lasts. One thing that trips people up is comparing their debt journey to others. You'll see people online paying off huge amounts quickly and feel like you're doing it wrong. What you don't see is their income, their support system, or their trade-offs. Your job is not to win a race. Your job is to build a life that works. This also means being honest about what caused the debt in the first place. Not to beat yourself up, but to prevent repeats. Was it lack of savings, irregular expenses, lifestyle creep, income instability? Understanding the cause helps you design a better system. Debt payoff without system changes is temporary. The balances might go down, but the pattern remains. That's why this series has been structured the way it has. Awareness, visibility, systems instead of motivation, a simple budget, an emergency fund, and now, debt. Each step supports the next. Quick pause here. If this series has been helping you think about money in a calmer, more realistic way, consider liking the video and subscribing. It helps more regular people find content like this instead of feeling overwhelmed by extremes. Let's talk about progress, because this is where mindset matters most. Progress with debt is rarely dramatic. It's slow, it's boring, it's quiet. And that's a good thing. If your debt balance is lower this month than last month, you're moving in the right direction, even if it's by a small amount, even if it feels underwhelming. Small reductions repeated consistently beat big pushes that burn out. Another thing people don't talk about enough is how long debt payoff actually takes. Most people underestimate it, get discouraged, and quit. Realistic timelines prevent that. If your plan takes longer than you hoped, that doesn't mean it's failing, it means it's honest. Debt didn't appear overnight. It usually doesn't disappear overnight either. And finally, let's talk about self-talk. How you talk to yourself about debt matters. If every payment feels like punishment, you'll resent the process. If you see each payment as buying back future freedom, the mindset shifts. You're not paying for past mistakes. You're investing in future stability. That reframe matters more than it sounds. So here's your action step from this video. List out your debts clearly. Make sure new debt is contained. Choose one extra payment target. Automate it if possible. And then let time and consistency do their job. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be steady. In the next video, we'll talk about how to increase progress without increasing stress. Whether that's finding margin in your budget, increasing income carefully, or making small optimizations that actually move the needle. But for now, remember this. Debt doesn't define you. It doesn't decide your future. It's just a problem with a solution. And you're already building the system that solves it. Bonus tip before you go. If debt feels overwhelming, hide the total balance from your daily view and focus only on the next payment. Big numbers create anxiety. Small, repeatable actions create progress. That's it for this one. See you in the next video.